Welcome back to Leaving the Lies and Speaking Your Truth. We're on part 3 of our interview with Jessica and Jacob. They are sharing their story of the House of Yahweh and how their marriage has survived getting married in a cult, leaving the cult, and getting healing from there on their journey of healing together. So, yeah, Jessica, I was asking before we left for the last part of part 2 was specifically what helped you to find your voice, or if there was anything that specifically helped you find your voice, and if so, what that was. And how long had you been married when you started voicing your opinions?
I think like anything else, like the healing part, the question prior to this one or this whatever,
Right.
it takes a while. It takes a lot, you know. It's baby steps. It's what is it that you're not okay with what you're doing, you know?
Right.
How what is it that you feel that you need to voice for yourself, and how is that other person taking it, treating you because of it, and stuff like that. So honestly, it's been a lot of things. You know, I did finally convince him while we're in the house for multiple marriage, please just at least consider me, you know, when it comes to taking on a second wife. We actually got to a point where we were like, hey, I told him, if you consider taking a second wife, please consider me first. Let
Right.
me get to know her before you get to know her. So that was a baby step to
Right.
me finding my voice. And then there were other things. And I think honestly, I think what really helped me push it further was when I spoke with the counselor.
Mm.
He did. He told me, he goes, you're very intelligent. I know that you love your husband very much and he's very important to you, but he will never know how you feel if you never share it with him. And I told him, well, he doesn't like for me to bring it up in certain ways. And he was like, well, he's never going to know if you never put your foot down and basically tell him, hey, listen, this is how I feel. Please consider that and just keep at it.
And let me
So,
clarify, this was the counselor that you were getting counseled from outside of the House of Yahweh.
yeah,
Okay.
And I
yes,
believe he also told her verbatim that she needed to find her voice.
yes, he did. He sure did. So, you know, after that, it's just like us trying to work things out that to help ourselves heal. You
Right.
know, I think for me, no, I think it was a healing for him too, because he realized how much he hurt me because of what I went through. So just like those steps, those are
Right.
the same steps that helped me to find my voice and be able to voice how I feel.
Well, I'm just going to
So,
say that I give you both a lot of credit for, because healing yourself is hard enough and going through those processes yourself, and you guys had to both heal individually, but then you also had to nurture and heal your marriage along that path as well. So you guys had twice as much work coming out of the House of Yahweh to keep your marriage together too, because it's hard enough to keep yourself sane when you leave a cult like that, and then
yes,
to
it is.
keep your marriage on track too is double duty. It's like constant repairing, constant healing, and I think it sounds to me like what Jacob was saying, that you guys talk so much and don't watch a lot of TV and do a lot of communicating. That has to have played a big role in how you were able to do that. It has to have.
Yeah. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, you know, it wasn't easy.
Right.
Our communication, our talking, there were multiple times where splitting up came up,
Right.
you know, and you know, there were from me ultimatums. You're
Right.
still going to have to take care of us, you know, because coming from the house, being a woman, it was his job to take care of us anyway. So financially, he was the one doing everything financially and whatnot. I didn't, honestly, I didn't get a job until 2010
Wow.
out in the world.
Right.
2010 was my first job, and it was scary.
Yeah.
Okay, it was scary coming from the House of Yahweh for so long and never ever communicating with people out there. And at that point, that was at one time we had our conversation, and the possibility of splitting up came up, and I was like, well, you're still going to pay the bills. You don't have to live here with us, but
Right.
I'm not paying anything until I can get a job and support
Right.
my girls. So yeah.
So Jacob, I have a
But
question for
yeah.
you about Jessica finding her voice. How did you initially react to that, and did your reaction change, and how did that affect you, or how did it possibly change the way you felt about her?
Well, my reaction initially, I didn't like it. I wasn't used to her having a voice.
Right.
She tried to find it honestly a long time ago in the House of Yahweh, because Israel had even encouraged her.
Oh,
He said, "You need to talk to. You need to be able to talk to boys." That's ridiculous, because my jealousy was through the roof. He
Mm,
even tried encouraging her a long time ago. You need to be able to talk to people, and he's going to have to learn to get over that.
yeah.
But I was a lot more assertive back then,
right.
and I had the backing of the teachings
Mm,
in the house. When we weren't there anymore, I couldn't use that as an excuse any longer. We weren't there. That was not our lives
you didn't
anymore.
have an army behind you anymore.
No, I didn't. And so at first I didn't like it. I didn't like it because I wasn't used to it, and it's something that I had to learn to meet her in the middle with.
Right.
And of course, she was patient, and it took many years to get through that. And like she said, the other counselor also told her, you need to find your voice. Didn't have as hard of a time with it then, but he also told me in that same, no, this was separate counsel. It's the first time that I counseled with him. He said, I haven't known you guys all your lives, but he told me about her. She said, I can tell you she's a sure thing.
Mm,
And I knew that. I was like, you're absolutely right, because that's the way that it's other people have seen her for me, that she's a sure thing. She's very determined, and I was the one she wanted, and that's it. How the relationship grew from it is I saw her, and this took a long time, come back to being the normal person that she was before the ugly stuff started happening. And she could talk to people, and she flourished at work, communicating with people, talking to them. They loved her. Everybody just gravitated towards her. All of our close friends, she could be out there talking, because we try to have people over when we can. With grandbabies, it's a lot harder, but she was able to hang out there, laugh, and make people laugh. And that's who she was before, everything happened. So that her finding her voice was a very big part of us coming closer together as a couple, because every wife needs to have a voice. They have to, if especially coming from the environment that we came from.
right.
If they don't find their voice, I
So
don't know how they can move forward.
you went from being jealous, Jacob, to being proud, kind of like that's my girl over there, socializing and
Yeah,
talking
and
to people.
she tells me when she goes to HEB or the grocery store, and even convenience stores, people approaching her, giving her comments and stuff like that. And yeah, I feel very proud of it. But she can do it, and she can come home and tell me those things and not be worried about it. Used to, when this first started out, there's no way she would mention something like that, because she would think that I would lose it.
I'd be getting grilled. Well, what
Right.
did you say? Did you smile? Did you do this? Did you
Did you look at him? Did you?
Right.
Yeah, ridiculous.
Right. And some of that was fostered by the House of Yahweh teachings. So some of your own insecurities and jealousies were kind of encouraged and fostered there. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah, at first I kind of thought, well, maybe no, it was just me. But when you have the backing of, you don't have to tell her squat.
Right.
That has an effect on how you conduct yourself with your significant other. It does.
Right.
It's something that you trust is coming from a person that knows what they're talking about and
has your best interest
has
Right.
your best interests at heart. And so, yeah, if you have that kind of mentality backing you, you feel like it can back you, then, it's absolutely something that's detrimental.
So we're gonna kind of go off track of that for a little bit, but So, Jacob, at the time that the wall of division went up in the house of Yahweh, because for anybody watching who doesn't know, a wall went up into the sanctuary of the house of Yahweh, dividing the men from the women. And you were not, you basically at that point, you were kind of the manager over the press room, and you were sort of a mentor to a lot of the young men that worked underneath you. Can you tell us what your conversations were like with them at that time, and what you felt that that wall meant for those young men and their futures in the house of Yahweh?
I thought they were pretty much done at that point. It's when they set up the wall and they were kept apart. There was no longer, when it first started, we all gathered at campfires and visited each other. And,
Good times.
We want to see the Michigan family. We want to see the Wisconsin family. So you'd make your rounds and talk to everybody, and
Right.
you get to interact. And of course, that part stopped before the wall.
Wow.
But when the wall went up, see, the young men in the press room were already getting to an age where they're starting to think about, establishing a household.
Right.
And,
Wives.
establishing their lives. So I saw it as something that was going to make it even harder for them to do so. And they were trying already. I know they were asking permission to talk to girls. They really weren't getting shots at doing that. The ones who were getting shots at talking to women that were young men who were of Kohan's families. No problem. And I hate to say that, I really do, because it's awful. But you think of the sons who came from the out of town, Kohan families, and they had no problem talking to somebody.
Right.
It was very easy, as opposed to these young men who were in the work. And then the wall was just, they didn't have access to talk to these young women. And I used to tell Shaul, y'all need to let these guys get married. And he used to throw Jessica in my face. Well, you can say that because you're already married and you're married to Jessica.
Right.
Well, we also went through hell and high water to get married too. It
Yes.
wasn't just like, let them get married. So, I told them, I think it's really important that y'all let them talk to girls and let them, start their lives if that's what they want to do. They're getting in their upper teenage years. So I just thought that was the end for them. And I told Shaul before they started leaving that they were all going to end up being pushed out, and they're going to leave because.
And is that essentially what you watched happen?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was quite a few young men. Of course, I worked with, before they started leaving, there was Nuke Milwaukee there,
Yep.
Kasha, David Moise, David Hawkins. A lot of us, we formed really strong bonds in that group. But
Right.
then you had your younger guys in there, Jacob Atkinson, Zachariah Davis, and Seth or Robert Smith. Him and Uremia Phelps, he was another one. Those were one of the first two that left. I think it's just a domino effect. One of them left, and then it just kept happening. And they saw that they weren't going to get anywhere with.
Right.
As far as talking to a woman and getting married, they knew that wasn't going to happen. And they shared with me some stuff about it, but only the ones that I was close to. But I could see that they just weren't going to have a shot.
And I did that at that time. Did you start questioning the idea of that, or some of the teachings at that point, based on the fact that you were seeing this happen?
I would ask Shaul that I would tell him I didn't see the point why you should keep them from being. I mean, you have plenty of young women in the house. You have plenty of young men, and then again, at the time, it wasn't a practice where they were starting to marry younger women. Okay, that wasn't happening when this was going on.
Okay.
So
They
maybe
had to
there
eliminate the young ones, the young men.
It was
That's
probably in the
kinda how I
works,
saw it.
potentially.
And the young guys that I was close to, I saw it as a tactic to where there wouldn't be any type of competition, none whatsoever. And the young women, yeah, you could say they had a choice, but it's hard to leave your family and everybody who's still here in the house behind. And they could have said, yes, well, I'm not going to get married to an older man, not going to do it. But You're talking about a younger girl whose probably parents were still in the house,
Right.
so she would have to leave them, and no child wants to do that, or no teenager wants to do that. So they were put between a rock and a hard place. I think the females were.
Right.
Either you get married, and even if it's an older guy, or you can be kicked out, or what did they call it when they excommunicated, whatever,
Yep.
and find your own way. But your parents
Wow.
are going to stay here because they're devoted. I mean, if you think about it,
That's basically how.
what choice did
Yeah.
they really have?
Right.
If a Kohan wanted to marry them, which it wasn't happening at the time, I really don't see what choice they had. But the wall, yeah, I think that was because not long after the wall, like I said, domino effect, they just started leaving
Right.
one after the other. And I think they saw it too. These weren't stupid guys. You know,
No.
they're not dumb.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think they saw that there was something there like, well, there's no way we communicate with them. And if we want to talk to somebody, we got to fill out an application.
Right.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, they probably at that point were like, well, if I ever want to have a woman in my life or even potentially see a woman, because I can't even see them behind this wall, I have to leave this place.
Yeah.
That's
And that,
for a young man, that's not really much of an option. That's not much of a choice. You're going to be single and celibate for the rest of your life, or you're going to go out there and find somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. That's basically what they did. That's why they left.
Yeah.
Well, that's not the only reason that they left, but that played a part in why these young men left.
I think it did a huge part.
So, Jacob, we're going to back up here a little bit about hearing about how your counseling sessions would go when you were, especially when you were betrothed to Jessica. But I know some of that even happened afterwards. And I know that you said that you were in a combative mode in a lot of these counseling sessions, not only to defend yourself, but somewhat to defend Jessica as well. So my question is, since leaving, have you been able to process that and analyze that? And are you now coming to the conclusion, or are you aware that you were actually being victimized and manipulated to some degree in those situations?
Honestly, it didn't really, I didn't process it the way that I'm processing it now until I had spoken to you in autumn. I didn't realize how bad it was. I really didn't. And I guess because back then it was the norm, I felt like it's just the norm, which is crazy because
Right.
I think about it now and no, I would never let that be the norm.
Right.
So in a sense, you know, nobody wants to say, well, no, that didn't happen to me because I'm too smart for that. And I'm not that naive, but I was a clear-headed guy. I was young and, I had common sense about me, but yet it still happened to me. So I'm just now processing that, how hard it was, what they put me through. And now, will I understand why they did it? I may never know, but there had to be something there.
I mean, and
I don't know.
we've speculated in our other conversation that we had before that, that they were potentially trying to get you to leave and run off. So potentially somebody else, maybe one of them, could even marry Jessica. I mean, there was something. There was something. We don't know for sure. They can't put our fingers on it totally because we aren't, in somebody else's mind. But there was some underlying agenda there, I think.
Well, yes, and I had forgotten about that. I agree because I know there's been people that have basically just been pushed out.
Right.
Yeah.
And, some of these Kohans are very smart too.
Right.
Very smart. And so I could see that is a very good possibility that maybe they were just trying to get me out of the picture. Once he's out of the picture, we don't have to worry about him anymore. If they did feel that way, that's pretty sad because then I was just a
Obstacle.
well, not just obstacle, but they say when you can be gotten rid of, or
Like a puppet, kind
what's
of?
the word I'm looking for?
Like a patsy or a puppet?
Not a patsy.
You're expendable.
Expendable.
Oh, expendable. Yes. Yes.
I was expendable, and processing it now. That's kind of how it makes me feel when
Right.
We were taught that we were the most precious things on the face of the earth. You know, we're in the
Yeah.
house of Yahweh, and
Right.
I used to see the Kohan's job as being super, super important. If you were a Kohan,
Right.
Yeah.
you no longer had your own life. Your life belonged to the people.
Hmm.
That's the way that I saw that it should
Right.
have been, but a lot of the times that's not how it turned out. So
Right. So now we know that you guys, because you shared this with us earlier, didn't actually leave the house of Yahweh together or at the same time, even though you did remain together as a couple. And I'm going to ask you, Jacob, because I know that you left first. When and why did you ultimately leave?
I think I left in 2007 or late 2006. That was
Okay.
after Tabernacles, late 2006.
Hmm.
Um, I think I had left what caused me to. I've been in the work for a long time. Uh, we had to apply for anything that we needed help with, which if it was anything medical or dental, of course, we had to have help because that kind of stuff's expensive.
Right.
And working for the house, you didn't get benefits. You didn't get
You didn't have health
Insurance.
Very well
insurance?
paid.
you did
What?
not get insurance. No. So I had asked to borrow money to have dental work done for her, and we had to go through a NIA bowler at that time, and we were turned down. And that's when I decided, okay, I have to do for my family. I have to provide for my family, and that's what y'all teach. I
Right.
have to provide for them, so I'm going to get a job. I'm going to quit this one and get a job. So I did end up quitting, and
Not at that point. Remember, because you were working in the press room
oh,
during the day, and then you were working.
I was
7-Eleven.
working eight to 5 in the press room. This is also what upset me about them denying me. I was working 8 to 5 in the press room, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. I would go home, which at the time, well, not the whole time, we were staying at her parents' apartments.
Yeah, Dad's.
Um, And then I'd go into work at the convenience store from 10 at night till 6 in the morning,
Oh, my
full
gosh.
time. So I was working 8 to 5 during the day, and then 10 to 6 overnight. I'd get off at 6, come home, take a nap, get up, go into the press room, and work from 8 to 5 all week. Just
How?
trying
When were you sleeping? How were you even functioning?
I
That's
was
like-
younger back then. But it was
Oh,
just
that's
two
like 2
full-time
hours of
jobs.
sleep a night, max. I'm thinking. I'm doing the math, and that puts you late to work.
It was hard. No, I slept for maybe 45 minutes in the morning because we had to get up and get ready to get to the
Yeah.
press room. But
And then he would sleep as soon as we got to my dad's house, he'd sleep until he had to get up. And we're fairly close to the 7-Eleven that he worked at.
Wow.
So he would sleep to the last minute, get up, do what he had to do, and head over there real quick. So
Wow.
So even with trying to do that and make ends meet, we got turned down, and that's when I decided I was going to leave the work entirely and just work out in the world and just get a better paying job, and still work 2 jobs if I had to. But that's part of why she didn't have to work for so many years, because I wanted her to be a stay-at-home mom. That she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom,
yeah.
Right.
and especially for the first one. So part of me working like that was to make sure that was made possible for her to do that. So when I quit and I got that call after the Tabernacles, Shaw was yelling at me, and I had given him 2 weeks notice, which I can't believe I did that back, now, but
That was nice of you.
I gave him 2 weeks. It's crazy.
It's just common courtesy for
Right.
normal people, you
Right,
know?
exactly.
Yeah, but this is work. I left there making $180. So, I told him that I quit, and he just yelled at me. And I think he expected me to come running back to the press room because I was getting ready to work with Aaron Thompson. I got blackballed on that as well, so that didn't work out. But that really was, to me, the straw that broke the camel's back behind everything else that had, happened. But I kind of put that behind me at the time where I just wasn't thinking about it. But
So now, Jacob, I'm gonna fill in some blanks here, because for anybody watching, basically what they did was they went behind your back and told Aaron that you couldn't work for him because he would be stealing you from the house of Yahweh, also told them that you were a thief and basically badmouthed you to Aaron. So they made it so that Aaron felt like if he hired you, he was sinning, and tried to make it so that you had no other choice but to go back and work for them. Tried to give it to where you had no other options. But is that what you ultimately ended up doing?
No, I was not going back to the press room. Aaron did feel bad about it. I mean, he did, but he was made to feel bad about it.
Right.
They did tell him that he would be guilty of stealing a worker from the house, and that I was lazy and I was a thief and a liar. And he apologized to me, but he said he couldn't because he'd be going against the elders.
Right.
So I was out of work for about a month, maybe a little over a month, maybe a month and a half. But no, I did not go back to the press room. If anything, that kind of made me want to give the middle finger, like I'm never, ever going back there. Definitely now.
Much less services.
Right.
Services were out of the question. He wasn't going up there.
No,
so after that,
I don't blame you.
That blackballing, I mean, which, not talking about just myself here, I'm talking about my family, my wife, my daughters.
Right.
You know, what kind of person can you be to do that and not think of how that's going to affect other people? Well, he knew, but he didn't care.
Right.
He thought, well, he's going to have to come back because he's going to be out of a job.
Right.
The sad thing is, it happened in a place where they profess to teach kindness, the peaceful solution,
right,
the this and that, and it's like, where was all that when
where
you
was
did
the
this
love
to
and
him?
compassion when it came to their own members?
Yes.
Yeah. Where was the love and compassion when you needed dental work, Jessica, and were in pain? Because I know how bad a toothache can be, and not only bad, painful and bad, but that's dangerous. Let's get real. That can get into your bloodstream and cause death, ultimately, if not taken care of. And how can they deny you? Those are basic human needs. And they were saying, nope, sorry, we can't approve that. You can't get that done. So, yeah, all of it, the whole package together, Jacob, I can see why you were done at that point. I'd have been done too, especially after dedicating 14 years of your life to the work.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a slap in the face.
Yeah, definitely.
And a kick in another part, of the body, but that basically was it. Of course, everything accumulated towards that point, but that was just it, because to not consider that how it's going to affect my family just really showed me that, if I'm not in the work, they just really don't care. They just want you in the work, and then you're left with so little resources.
Yeah.
And if you're going to leave, that it's going to be really hard. Well, what gets me is the churches were so evil. They were this and that. There are so many people who left, and guess who helped them get established? Churches did. These evil, demon-worshiping organizations.
According to the House of Yahweh.
Yeah. And a lot of families that left, churches were right there to help them. No questions asked, just help them.
Wow.
So we didn't have that. Thankfully, we didn't have to do anything like that. My mom and them bought us groceries for that month and paid our bills and things like that. It was hard on them, but that was a point where I decided I was going to.
Yeah.
So Jessica, that was like late 2006. Jessica, you then continued you stayed in the House of Yahweh. So you guys were still married, but Jacob was out now. How much longer did you stay? When did you leave, and why?
After recalculating everything, I left about the time my youngest daughter, who was born in 2007, she was about a year and a half.
Okay.
So I stayed there for a good long amount of time. I didn't realize it was that long. One of the main reasons I stayed so long is because you're taught from the beginning that if you ever leave the House of Yahweh, there is no hope for salvation for you. So of course, being a mom with children that I brought into the world, knowing this understanding, I wasn't going to subject them to eternal damnation.
Right.
Even though they weren't baptized into it or anything like that. That's how I understood it. That's what I took from it.
Right.
So I stayed there for as long as I could. just to try to make sure that this is where I need to be, or like this is not where I need to be. What broke the camel's back, honestly, for me is they started like telling us no watching TV for the children. Read the scriptures to them. Read the Peaceful Solution. Cartoons are bad because animals, you know, there's cartoons where animals talk and animals don't talk, and you know, this and that. Beauty and the Beast, that's teaching bestiality. You name it, they had a reason why you should not. No toys. Don't give them toys because it allows them to use their imagination. And it's like, you know, I'm not going to restrict my children, who at the time was one. How old was Nicasia? 1, 6, and 11.
Wow.
So, you know, there's no way that I'm going to sit there and entertain those 3 different age groups. You know, no. Yeah. I'm sorry, girls, go pop a video in.
Right.
Or go play with your toys. If you guys want to go outside and play, go outside and play. But it started getting to the point where I just could not I didn't feel comfortable for my girls to be fellowshipping, associating with other children up there, because what if my girls said something wrong that made them frown upon? Because, you know, there were other little girls. You can't be doing that. What is your mom teaching you?
Right.
That's evil. And even adults would. They'd look at my girls like, what is your mom doing? What is your mama doing? It's like, so it got to the point where we would
meaning
go
if they kind of mentioned that they watched a video or a movie or a cartoon or something, they would be ostracized for that and reprimanded.
Basically. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I knew there were a couple of people that I was close to. I knew, and we would talk, you know, and be like, you know, it's kind of hard. I don't mind my girls talking to your girls, but I'm sorry if they mention something too loud and some parent is like, da, 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 you know, or did you hear what they just said? Or by that time they gave up on me, so no counseling for me.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They just let her go. They weren't like, hey, what's going on? You need to talk. I mean, think about it.
So it's almost like they were ready for you to go.
Yeah, basically, I think they were like, okay, Cove's out the door. Give her some time, she's going to be gone too. So there was no, hey, how are you doing? Is there anything that I can help you with or anything like that?
So they kind of had detached from you when he left, way before you actually physically ended up leaving.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so you could feel that.
That's fine. Yeah, and that's fine. Really, it hurt me only because I grew up with these people since I was 12. And I thought you had more compassion and you cared for me a little bit more than just that. But, you know, even before he had left, I think when we had our second child, I think that's when I started seeing how fake those people were. You know, and it's like, okay, I see you. So I think from that point, I started to kind of detach from, am I saying that right?
Distance yourself.
Distance myself. Thank you very much from them. So it really wasn't hard, because by the time I decided to leave about late 2009, really wasn't that hard.
Okay, so it was almost 3 years in between then when you left. Wow.
Yeah, close to it.
But I know that you kind of told me at the end there, though, that you basically were kind of showing up to services as up to the last minute that you could, going to the service and getting out as quick as you could.
Hurry up and get out. Yeah. And so the only time I would stay after services is if my girls was like, hey, can we say hi to so-and-so? Okay, hurry up, go say hi and let's go. So, yeah.
So you were kind of going through the motions, but had almost mentally left yourself a little bit, even before you probably physically did, which a lot of people do that. It's a process.
Yeah, and honestly, I think when he had left back in 2006, after having my daughter, because I had to rethink my timeline. I thought I had left when my baby was only 6 months old. But I think from that point, like after I had seen how truly they were treating him and they're mulling things over in my head, I think by the time my youngest turned 6 months, I think that's where mentally I just stepped out and was just like going through the motions to see,
Right.
can you bring this spark back for me?
Right.
Is there a spark to be reignited? So.
And you never found it.
No.
It just slowly fizzled out.
She just reminded me of something, because when she said that she kind of knew she was on her way out, I knew I was too. When David Hawkins and I used to sit in the back, the very back of the sanctuary, when we stopped bringing our books of Yahweh. We didn't even bring our books of Yahweh up to service. We just went up there, went to the back, and a lot of the times we fell asleep. But those are my last days in the house as far as going to services, is me and David Hawkins sitting in the very back. We didn't bring our books of Yahweh. We didn't follow along in scripture or anything like that. We didn't get up and clap when the kids would come walking out, the almighty, whatever they were. But, we stood up, but we didn't clap. It's just, we were both at that point, I think, where
mentally
we knew we were on our way out. Yeah.
Yep. So, Jacob, what were some of the difficulties that you faced adjusting when you got out of the House of Yahweh? And how was it difficult for you that Jessica was still there after you had left?
It wasn't difficult. The thing that I had to get used to is I knew I was going to let her make her decision on her own.
Right.
But I did worry about her because I wasn't there, just in case something happened. But they kind of just, I think after so long, they just let, they weren't going to break us. They weren't,
cause.
They weren't going to change our minds. We had already been married for so many years, but
right.
I worried about her a little bit, but the transitioning part of it, for me was just my main thing was to get working and make sure that I could provide, because at the time that we left with nothing. We had nothing, and we were staying in a mobile home that conditions would, if we had pictures of it and we showed you, you would just shake your head like, how did y'all live in a place like that?
Your jaw would drop.
It was pretty horrible, but it was a dwelling, and we had it because it was
a little better than a tent. It was a notch up from a tent, right, Jessica?
Yes. Granted, yes.
Huge jump from a tent. But we had that mobile home because my mom purchased land that had 2 mobile homes on it. That one was in the worst condition, but we tried to get it livable, which we did, but it was still in pretty horrible shape. So that was, with me, it was just getting to work and making sure that I could provide for my family. That was my main concern.
So, Jessica, what were some of the difficulties you faced after leaving, and did you have any triggers after leaving?
Let's see. Difficulties after leaving. I think my biggest would be getting a job and not being afraid of being a part of the workforce.
Right.
Only because, I worked at the press room, I worked at the learning center for the House of Yahweh, but it was with people that you saw every day.
Right.
Every weekend. So it really wasn't a big deal, and so when you leave the House of Yahweh and you have to make your own way in the world per se, you come across all kinds of different people that you don't know, you've never met, you don't know how to interact with them sometimes. So that was one of my difficulties. And then, of course, finding my voice and feeling like I'm too timid, too shy and stuff like that, that played a role in it. Triggers, I still try to eat according to House of Yahweh. We do eat a little bit of pork, but not so much. Anything that trigger me, I would have to say, if I ever see somebody dealing with maybe a mentally abusive relationship or something like that, I always feel that I have something that could possibly help them either stand up for themselves, find their voice, or just try to figure out what is it that possibly can be done to make things work. So there's a lot, Melody, a lot. So
So, and I'm going to bring this up specifically because you did share this within our conversation earlier, and I'm only bringing it up because I think it actually has affected a lot of, especially women that have left the House of Yahweh, about with the pandemic going on, with the masks being a trigger for you as well, and that being hard for you. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
think that sharing that will help some of the other women that might be listening that have left, because I know you're not the only one I've heard say it. I've heard many women say it that have left. That is a trigger for
Oh,
them.
yeah, because I think it was like the last 2 years, maybe the last 2 years that I was there. Might have been longer than that. I don't know.
Right,
My timeline might be off. But so it was to do with being clean and unclean
right.
and whatnot. And then they were like, well, you're a precious whatever jewel, so you shouldn't be showing your face to other men and stuff. So
Mm,
we would have to wear veils
right,
every Sabbath, heading up there in a vehicle, put your veil on. That way men don't see you. If you're unclean, you're not contaminating somebody else. So for me to have to do that every time I went up to the sanctuary, not just on Sabbaths,
right.
whenever I went up, had to have a veil. So when this pandemic hit, and thankfully my job, which we work at the same place, he works at home. I was working in the office. They're like, everybody go home. Remote work until we tell you guys to come back.
Right.
Well, it was about 2 months ago, we get an email saying, hey, we're going to slowly start incorporating everybody back into the office. Masks is mandatory.
Mm,
Melody, from the time of lockdown, I told Jacob and my oldest daughter, I was like, I'm not going out there.
mm,
If they make me wear a mask, I can't. I tried a mask earlier at the beginning part of the pandemic. I nearly had anxiety. Like I
oh,
could feel anxiety,
yep.
and I almost started crying, and I
Wow.
had to rip the mask off. It I am still mentally scarred, but at least I can wear it into store, do what I have to do, and then walk out. And as soon as I'm out those doors, it comes off.
Right.
So it does play a mental role for anybody who is in the House of Yahweh, and you know what it's like. Trust me, we are all in the same boat. We prefer not to wear it. So
Right. No, I just thought that was important because I know that other people are definitely going to be able to relate to that. So we're
yeah.
getting ready to wrap up here, and up for the finality, I would like both of you to give both of you the opportunity to give a message to anyone that might still be in the House of Yahweh, or even someone that might be stuck in another cult. Do you have a message you'd like to give to anybody out there?
Yeah, we were in there long enough for many years to be able to see how things progressed. The scary thing about things like that, of course, they don't just dump it on you all at once. It's a small progression throughout time.
Mm-hmm.
It's one act and then it's another one, and it's spaced out enough to where let's let them deal with that past one, and then we'll lay another restriction on there. Uh, Hearing the stuff, because I know you left a lot earlier that she was mentioning when she was still there and I had left, it was just getting darker and darker,
Yeah.
and changing the educating of the children, and even separating them into groups. It was just more and more going towards total control,
Right.
to where now I don't even have control over what my girls are learning, or what they're being taught. So, but the thing is, it takes place over time, and unless you've been there and experienced that, it's hard to see, especially while you're going through it. I didn't see it that way until years and years and years after, many, many years. So it's a small progression, and it's very subtle. It's very,
Yeah.
Yeah.
deceptive in how it comes in. But by the time she left, I saw it was just getting to a point where you weren't going to have any type of control. And that's always a bad situation for anyone, especially if you have a family and stuff like that. So it's all about really just, you know, thinking for yourself. And I used to do a lot of research and studying and stuff too, but you got to really figure what you're getting out of it. Is it something that you see is benefiting you? Uh, because I worked in the work thinking I was going to gain that benefit, and it never came. So is it really benefiting you, or is it just a the what do you call it?
No, what you,
The narrative.
I guess.
The narrative, yes. That just changes to fit what they're wanting to do.
Yes.
Yes, that is the narrative. Yep. Oh.
So it did every time when they wanted to do something. If it went against what they had taught in the past, they would just change the narrative to fit that scenario. So
Yep.
just be a critical thinker. If you're still there in the house, or if you're in a cult, do your research.
And if your gut's telling you something's wrong, listen to that instinct inside of you, because the thing is that, like you said, that they bring it on one thing at a time, and it's so slowly that sometimes you're like you'll talk yourself into something that you normally wouldn't, because you're like, well, I have to believe this in order to stay here, and so you'll slowly just tolerate it. But then, like you said, then it's almost like then they're like, okay, well, we got them now, and then they just keep piling more on until and everybody has a breaking point. And I'm sure there's somebody in there right now that's at a breaking point. If you're being told to do something that you're questioning, study it out for yourself. Look into it. Read. Because they even, in my opinion, they even go against their own scriptures half the time, and some of the things that they're now teaching that I'm just like, where is that coming from? How is that even in the Bible?
When did that change?
It's just changing the narrative. It's whenever it needs to be changed.
Yep. So, and Jessica, do you have any specific message you want to give anybody that's still maybe in the House of Yahweh that's thinking about leaving?
Absolutely. So, for my part, I was 12 years old when I moved to the House of Yahweh. 10 years old when I was introduced to it. So it took me about 20 years, of being in the House of Yahweh. That is a lot of learning and things that they're teaching you and telling you that you need to feel, think, and do. And yes, it's scary. It is scary. But if I am speaking to a person that went into the House of Yahweh as a child, please keep in mind that your parents were called, not you. You always have the opportunity to make your own choices. Please don't feel stuck, and for anyone who's left the house, which I know of several people who have left the House of Yahweh and deal with things psychologically, do not worry about reaching out to people, whether it's people that came from the House of Yahweh, a professional counselor, someone. Please talk it through. It's not an easy lifestyle to have lived through. And maybe other cults, I know we are very similar when it comes to cult life,
right?
So you always have somebody that has experienced something similar that you can also talk to.
And I think they'll find it surprising how many people will be willing to help them and reach out to them and help them transition any way they need to.
Yep. And look at the fact that how much all of us have stayed in contact, at least, through Facebook and stuff, even to the degree of offering each other. I know if any one of the ex-House of Yahweh members contact me, which I've talked to several of them, that, I'll offer emotional support almost day and night. I mean, if I'm sleeping, as soon as I wake up, I'll answer a message from somebody that leaves me a message on Facebook. If they're just asking a quick question or want to know something, or if they wanted to have a phone call, I would call anybody and talk to them if they needed that. Absolutely. I think that's really good advice. And I want to thank you, both of you, for coming on and sharing your amazing story. It's very enlightening, and I'm so happy for both of you that you were able to come out and stay together and be an example of perseverance, that not everybody has your story and not everybody has that success. But I think it's awesome and amazing. And I thank you both for coming on, for sharing your story. And I want to tell everybody else out there, please like, share, and subscribe. Please, in the comments, give Jessica and Jacob some positive reinforcement, some love. Tell them what you think of their story. Ask any questions. I'm sure they'll answer questions. If you have any questions about details about their story, put them in the comments below.
Absolutely.
Awesome, guys. Awesome. Perfect. So again, thank you so much for your time today. You guys have a great evening. It was good talking to you.
You as well.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.